It's Monday, August 23rd, and this is now on HNN.
While we're canceling the large gatherings, we are going to allow other events to happen.
Amid the ongoing COVID surge, the city cancels all large gatherings on Oahu.
Get your vaccination. Get it today.
New today, a major milestone in the pandemic. The FDA gives full approval to Pfizer's COVID vaccine.
A new COVID vaccine is rolled out. I'm Ian Lee with how scientists around the world are tackling the virus.
These stories, plus we're tracking severe weather. The latest developments coming up on This Is Now.
I fully support the city and county's decision to shut down all activities, more than 10 indoors and 25 outdoors, because we need to take action to slow the spread of COVID-19.
That's Governor Ige reacting to today's big news. All gatherings on Oahu that exceed current limits will be canceled. This is an attempt to curb the spread of new COVID infections on the island.
It's two issues, I think, that come to the forefront in every county. It is about hospital capacity and our ability to take care of those who need care. We are also looking at various differences in how much virus activity is occurring in each county. As you know, Kauai throughout this pandemic has had lower case counts than any of the other counties. And, I think all across the state, we're committed to keeping schools open and in-person learning, because we know that that's very important to our children. And then we are looking at what kind of further action, just like here in the city and county of Honolulu, we felt compelled to restrict all activities, more than 10 indoors and more than 25 outdoors, because the virus continues to spread and we see continuing case counts.
All right, we're going to have so much more COVID news coming up in just a moment. But first, we wanted to get to the other big story of the day. We're talking about the weather, right, Ash?
That's right. Remnants of former tropical cyclone Linda are bringing the potential for severe weather. Billy V is here with the latest update. Now, Billy, there is a flash flood watch posted right now.
There is a flash flood watch, but there's a couple of other things that you should be paying attention to. So let's go ahead and bring that to you. Flash flood watch is in effect until 6 a.m. tomorrow. That's for all islands. But we've also got a high surf advisory that's in effect for the east-facing shore. There's lots of wave energy out there. Unless you're experienced, you don't belong out there in the water because it's very unpredictable. Small craft advisories are in effect for portions of Hawaiian waters, and this is due to the gusty winds that are associated with Linda. And one more warning for you, that's a wind advisory. That's because the winds are 25 to 30 miles per hour, localized gusts over 50 miles per hour. And if I can, real quickly here, when the winds come, and they come from the windward side, because that's where the storm is located, they'll come up and over the ko'olau, and as they come down slope, they can pick up speed. So if you're in the valleys, if you're on those actual slopes on the town side, you could get really windy conditions too.
Right. So where are we seeing the action now, and what can we expect throughout the day?
Okay, so let's show you the moisture for the last couple of hours, and it's look at it. It's like somebody is pouring water in between Molokai and Oahu. But it's on the move to the west. So that means that we're going to get a lot of this built-up moisture that's inside of this storm as we get to the afternoon hours. So let's go ahead and put this on here for you. This is the rain and wind trend model. So we're at noon. This is what it looks like right now. Notice the darker colors of green. That's where the heaviest rains are. And so we're going to move this over a couple of hours. This is, let's see here. Oh, they're coming at 5:30, 9 p.m. this evening. You notice it's just offshore of Oahu. And then as we put it a little bit more into motion, and if I can get my clicker to pick up, there we go. 1 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be just off of Oahu, and Kauai starting to get a lot of that. And it's not really until later on Tuesday that it finally does pull away and leaves us with trade wind weather.
All right, guys, I want to show you this because this is our live camera coming in from Waikiki. And look real closely there for our podcast listeners. See what I'm seeing? Rain. It's starting to happen, Billy. How much rain are we going to talk about here?
National Weather Service, I got a chance to talk with Bob Ballard. It's it's questionable about how much rain we will get because it's spotty showers. And so in some places it may look fine. In other places, it's going to be a drenching. So we're talking, be careful on your afternoon commute because there's a lot of rain out there in the atmosphere. And Oahu and Kauai will get a lot of it in the next 24 hours.
All right, Billy V, thank you so much for that update. As a reminder, get updates all day long on your H&N Weather app. Let's go ahead and turn it over to today's talker story.
Now to the latest coronavirus numbers. The state health department is reporting 571 new infections today. The breakdown by island shows 107 cases on the Big Island, 79 on Maui, 2 on Lanai. Kauai is reporting 23 cases. Oahu has 359, and out of state is recording 1. And new today, Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi held a press conference this morning announcing new COVID restrictions on gatherings.
Community spread, communal spread is coming from the large gatherings. And so effective on Wednesday, the 25th, we're going to cancel all large gatherings. And so to give a perspective on that, people have been submitting per the governor's proclamation. They've been submitting mitigation plans, which we have been agreeing to. We had some 180 plans that really were about to happen that were like over 50 people, over 200, over 500, over 1,000, extensive plans. And we understand that there's an economic impact to that as well, and I'll address that in a moment. But we're going to effective on the 25th. We're going down to, we're eliminating all large gatherings. We're canceling all large gatherings, and that includes University of Hawaii as far as the football team and women's volleyball as well, or any of the venues. We're going to be shutting down Blaisdell, obviously, Waikiki Shell, and any other venues that we can control. And so the thought there is that we feel that that's really the major source of communal spread, and at the same time, we're obviously urging everyone to be vaccinated.
You just heard the mayor say it right there. All large gatherings on Oahu that exceed current limits, that's 10 indoors and 25 outdoors, will be canceled as part of this latest push to address the surging cases. The new rules will take effect on Wednesday. You just heard the mayor say that as well. They will stay in place for at least 28 days. This applies across the board, including professionally organized events like at the Waikiki Shell and the Blaisdell Center. Weddings and funerals will also have to follow gathering size restrictions.
We're going to enforce. We're just going to, I think hopefully there's a lot of community watch going on. If somebody knows of a gathering, that was a tip that we got on Waianae the other night. And hoping that people are just going to understand that we're really in a different place. Really what we're living through right now is exactly what was feared going back to March and April when we initially locked down in 2020. When there was a concern about everything we were seeing from pictures from, the mainland about what hospitals look like and whatever else. And the fact of the matter is that never really happened here. And now, on a delayed basis, despite 1 million people being vaccinated, which is the really incredible situation we're in, that is happening. Our hospitals are being pushed, as you've heard from everybody up here. We're being taxed on manpower in every single way we can. So we're hoping that the community is going to understand this, be able to accept it, and be able to help us monitor and help us enforce.
Well, there were a record number of COVID hospitalizations for the state yesterday, 390, an increase of 90 from the prior Sunday, and almost 100 more than the prior peak of 291 in August of last year. To get an update on how the hospitals and healthcare providers are doing, we just talked to Hilton Rathel, President and CEO of Healthcare Association of Hawaii.
Today, we have 410 COVID patients in our hospitals. So it has gone in 8 days. From Sunday of last week, we're at 300. It's gone in 8 days to 410. Now, the one good piece of news about that is that the total number of hospitalizations is still manageable, but the number of COVID hospitalizations is very high. We also have a record number of COVID ICU patients. We have 71 this weekend versus a prior peak of 64. So last year in September and October, before the vaccinations were available, we had a lot of elderly patients and patients with multiple comorbidities in our hospitals. Even though we have 62% of our population fully vaccinated and almost 70% partially vaccinated, we still had a record number of COVID ICU patients, against 71.
Pfizer's COVID vaccine is now fully approved for use in people ages 16 and up. Let's turn it over to Femi Redwood with the latest developments from today.
Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine is the first to be fully approved by federal regulators. It will be marketed under the name Comirnaty. FDA officials hope the approval lifts public confidence in the vaccine among the unvaccinated.
The public can be confident that this vaccine meets the FDA's gold standards for safety, effectiveness, and manufacturing quality that we require for an approved product.
President Biden has a message for Americans who vowed to wait for full approval before getting inoculated.
The moment you've been waiting for is here. It's time for you to go get your vaccination and get it today. Today.
Following approval, the Pentagon announced it will require members of the military to get the vaccine, and New York City's public school teachers and staffers must do so as well. Nationwide, just over half the U.S. population has gotten fully vaccinated, while the vaccines were under emergency use authorizations. But vaccination rates are going up again as unvaccinated patients infected with the Delta variant fills hospitals across the country. In Louisiana, the number of COVID deaths in that state jumped more than 300% since June. At Our Lady of Lourdes Regional Medical Center in Lafayette, every one of the 24 patients in the main ICU are COVID positive, including 24-year-old Kaylee Rowe, who was unvaccinated and pregnant. Doctors delivered her baby, but Rowe remains on a ventilator.
We booked a family vacation. We thought, like the rest of the world, this isn't that real of a virus.
And as more children head back into the classroom, a CBS News poll finds while the majority of parents support a mask requirement, they are split over vaccine requirements. It found 48% of parents think schools should require a vaccine, while 52% believe schools should not. Femi Redwood, CBS News, New York.
Here at home, vaccine or testing mandates are now in effect for all Department of Education employees. Teachers and staff must upload proof of vaccination or take a COVID test every week. Those not vaccinated will need to pay for the weekly tests and take them outside of work hours. The order applies to salaried workers as well as subs and volunteers. Last week, the DOE reported 383 cases tied to Hawaii's public schools. School begins today for the University of Hawaii, and if students, staff, or visitors want to come on campus, they either need to get tested or upload their vaccine cards. Sammy Solina has more.
Staff, students, visitors will need to upload their proof of vaccination or their weekly negative COVID test to the Lumi site app if they want to go ahead and come on campus. And places like the bookstore, places like the Warriors Recreation Center, they're going to be checking this at the door to ensure that everyone has fulfilled that requirement. For students who are learning completely online and aren't coming on campus, they don't have any requirements. UH said there are some circumstances where vaccination may be required. For example, with clinicals or field work where it might be hard to maintain distance. Dorm rooms are also requiring students to be fully vaccinated. You can't just test. The faculty and students we talked to said even though it's a little extra work to get on campus, they feel safer when they get here.
It adds a level of confidence for all of us. I think it makes sure we're all on the same page with things. I think it's a good thing.
You know, it is really reassuring that they have a lot of restrictions and stuff. It's kind of inconvenient sometimes, but definitely really grateful that they're taking it serious and they want to keep people safe. So.
University officials say the full FDA approval of the Pfizer vaccine won't affect the rules for this semester, but there's a different plan for the spring.
So our planning right now is there are basically three categories. You're vaccinated, you have an exemption, medical or religious exemption, in which case you need to have a negative COVID test, or you do not have an exemption. If you do not have an exemption by the spring semester, you will not be allowed to campus.
All of these rules apply to all University of Hawaii campuses. Sammy Solina for This Is Now.
Happening today at 1:30, Honolulu prosecutor Steve Alm will hold a news conference on a judge's decision not to put 3 HPD officers on trial for the death of 16-year-old I Remember Psycap. We've learned that Alm has told his office he is ending the prosecution against the officers. Alm could have decided to appeal or charge them again. A grand jury declined charges against the officers back in June, but Alm's office decided to charge them with murder and attempted murder. Then, after a lengthy preliminary hearing, a district court judge last week ruled the officers won't be put on trial for the April shooting. Well, in the last 24 hours alone, the U.S. and its allies have evacuated more than 16,000 people out of Afghanistan. This comes as there's a growing threat of attacks on U.S. forces. Let's turn it over to Skylar Henry, who has the very latest from the White House.
An Afghan guard was killed when attackers opened fire outside the airport in Kabul Monday morning. U.S. soldiers were involved in the fight.
No U.S. casualties, a partner force or coalition forces were involved, but regrettably, an Afghan security force member lost his life.
U.S. officials say the threat of terrorist attacks on U.S. forces at the airport is growing, so the military is looking into extending the safe zone around the airport.
Every day we have troops on the ground. These troops and innocent civilians at the airport face the risk of attack from ISIS-K from a distance, even though we're moving back the perimeter significantly.
Thousands of Americans remain trapped in Kabul, and the U.S. is working on ways to get them safely to the airport.
We're executing a plan to move groups of these Americans to safety and to safely and effectively move them to the airport compound.
The president's deadline to complete the withdrawal from Afghanistan is next week, but he now says he may be flexible with the timeline in order to finish the evacuations.
Our hope is we will not have to extend, but there are going to be discussions, I suspect, on how far along we are in the process.
The Defense Department is enlisting the support of 6 airlines to help clear the backlog of refugees from processing centers like this one in Qatar. United Airlines, American Airlines, Atlas Air, Delta Airlines, Omni Air, and Hawaiian Airlines will send a total of 18 aircraft to Middle East bases.
This will increase passenger movement from the intermediate staging bases, temporary safe havens, to the United States.
Many of the evacuees will enter the U.S. at Dulles Airport outside of Washington, D.C., before being flown to military bases around the country. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
Let's take a look at the state's visitor arrival numbers. August arrivals are now down 16% from pre-COVID 2019, and we're no longer getting 30,000 arrivals a day. Some Hawaii residents are calling for more restrictions on travel, but Lieutenant Governor Josh Green says it's not that simple. Green says pre-travel testing cannot easily be reinstated because of the CDC's position that vaccinated travel is safe. He says that means the state attorney general cannot defend the testing requirement if it's challenged.
The Delta variant is driving up cases here and across the world. CBS's Ian Lee takes a global look at what's happening.
Many Australians have had enough. Thousands clashed with police in cities across the country over the weekend. They're angry over constant lockdowns as COVID cases rise and a slow vaccine rollout. Taiwan has rolled out its first homegrown vaccine. The president got the shot to give it a boost of confidence, although critics say it's being rushed out too quickly. But speed is what they need in Kenya. The U.S. donated its first batch of 3.5 million Moderna doses.
These life-saving vaccines will fill an important need at a critical time in Kenya's fight against COVID-19.
A sign of normalcy returned to the UK. The changing of the guard resumed at Buckingham Palace for the first time since the pandemic began. And scientists here are now starting large-scale antibody testing. They want to find out how much natural protection people have after catching COVID. Israel is testing for antibodies in children as young as 3. Unable to get vaccinated, they want to know how many kids have strong resistance to the virus.
Something cool.
And in Vietnam, the country is experiencing its worst outbreak so far. Authorities expanded a lockdown just a day ahead of Vice President Kamala Harris's state visit. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
All right, let's switch gears here just a little bit to see what the internet is talking about today. I'll start with this. It's latest news about the James Bond franchise. So pay attention to what this poster says that I pulled up on the screen. And for our podcast listeners, I'll just tell you, it says No Time to Die 007 April 2020. Well, that did not happen. But we've learned it could be hitting theaters soon. Some of them. Well, Australia says it won't be until at least November, but according to the official 007 Twitter account, Daniel Craig will return for his last time in this franchise in the UK on September 30th and in the US on October 8th. I'm sure that's all up in the air, though, depending on what actually unfolds with what we're seeing there. With
He was a great James Bond.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like Pierce Brosnan, too, but I loved him. Yes.
Yeah.
What else you got?
So actress and neuroscientist Mayim Bialik is reportedly going to be the temporary host of Jeopardy! So sources at the show say she has been tapped to tape several weeks' worth of the beloved game show. This comes after recently selected host Mike Richards stepped down after offensive remarks he previously made on a podcast resurfaced. Bialik is slated to host Jeopardy's primetime specials before stepping into the host's main show, but it's possible it might not be so temporary. One source says Sony executives are considering making her the permanent host if she can figure out how to work on the show while also shooting her TV sitcom.
A very, very busy woman there, and I'm still waiting for my call, Jeopardy! Yep. I take that call job.
So fall means pumpkin everything, right?
Yep.
So pumpkin fans can rejoice because Starbucks is bringing the pumpkin spice latte back earlier than ever before. So the drink's making its seasonal debut tomorrow. That's one day earlier than last year. The rollout comes after other competitors like Dunkin' made their fall lineups available earlier as well. So Dunkin' brought out its pumpkin drinks last Wednesday.
I think we're the only two people in the newsroom that are not excited about that.
I mean, I'm not a big coffee Starbucks person anyway, but I like pumpkin.
Oh, you did like the pumpkin spice? I didn't think you liked that one. It's not my favorite. All right, some big shopping news you can consider, right?
Yes, this is exciting. The Made in Hawaii Festival has its virtual marketplace up and running, and it features hundreds of amazing local products. Now, there is still a plan for an in-person festival in November at the Hawaii Convention Center. We'll see if that happens, though. But in the meantime, happy shopping at madeinhawaiifestival.com.
One of the coolest events in town, and again, I'm sure that's up in the air too, given what the recent news of the day was. So I just want to remind everyone something about that. There is a press conference coming up at 2 p.m. with Governor Ige. We're going to bring that to you live on all your H&N digital platforms, so just stay tuned to that. Also, the other thing we're watching, I'll take you back live outside to Waikiki. That's looking down at the Hilton Hawaiian Village there, and you can see just a few drops coming down right now, but we do expect that rain to increase over the next few hours, as Billy said, into your evening commute. So you want to make sure to download your H&N weather app. You can just pull up radar right there in the palm of your hand and just zoom in almost to your street level and see exactly where the storms and heavy rain is coming down. And you can do that anytime you want. So you don't even have to wait to the next forecast coming out from H&M.
Right. And along with the governor's press conference at 2, we know that Big Island Mayor Mitch Roth is going to have a press conference at 4. So we'll be streaming that live during First as 4 as well.
And actually, even one more press conference other than that. Steve Alm's press conference is at 1:30
yeah, lots
as well.
going on today.
So a very busy afternoon. The best reason you have is to watch First at 4. That's where you're going to get the wrap-up of all this information that's going to be unfolding throughout the afternoon at all these press conferences. So you can watch them live on your H&N digital platforms, or just watch First at 4 with Mark and Ashley at KHNL. So you guys, we're going to be busy, so you have a good afternoon. We'll be back here tomorrow.
Stay dry, everybody.
Have a good one.